Starting off this hour, new information is coming out this week about a federal public defender who was actually found dead in his apartment. Investigators say that 38-year-old Andy Hart committed suicide. He died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound early last week. Hart left behind a suicide note and a thumb drive, reportedly containing case files of his clients. And some of those clients were actually Guantanamo Bay inmates. Over the years, he represented low-level al-Qaeda operative Khalid Saeed Mohammed, accused Tunisian extremist Adel Hakimi, and most notably, Mohammed Rahim al-Afghani, a man who is thought to have been Osama bin Laden's translator. Meanwhile, the hunger strike in Guantanamo Bay has no end in sight. 100 of the 166 detainees there are actually starving themselves. 23 of them are now being force-fed by medical personnel. This is happening despite President Obama's renewed promise to actually close that detention facility down in Cuba. There are a lot of questions and criticisms over why President Obama has made these promises time and time again, but has actually failed to follow through. Some believe that the president's hands are tied by Congress. Well, RT political commentator Sam Sachs shows us what measures the president can take without Congress's approval.
This week, the hunger strike at the U.S. military detention facility in Guantanamo Bay grows, with more than 100 prisoners now involved. And the president once again pledged to close Gitmo down.
It is not a surprise to me that we've got problems in Guantanamo, which is why when I was campaigning in 2007 and 2008, and when I was elected in 2008, I said we need to close Guantanamo. I continue to believe that we've got to close Guantanamo. Now, Congress determined that they would not let us close it.
Now, it's true, Congress has thrown roadblocks. They've denied funding for a new facility in the U.S. to replace Gitmo. They've forbidden any prisoners from being tried in the U.S. in civilian courts. They've forbidden the transfer of detainees to nations in unrest or that sponsor terrorism. And they've forbidden the release of any prisoner until the administration can confirm with absolute certainty that these prisoners won't pose a future risk to the United States, something that's, well, it's impossible to guarantee. So yeah, Congress hasn't made it easy. And with the latest poll showing 70% of Americans support keeping Gitmo open, well, don't expect Congress to budge anytime soon. But it sounds like the president foresees a moral crisis if the facility stays open. So what can he do right now to close it? Well, first, he can certify the release of more than half of the current detainees by claiming it's in the interest of national security. There are 166 men at Gitmo. Only 9 have been convicted or charged with a crime. Another 24 could soon face prosecution, and 47 are considered threats to the United States but aren't facing prosecution, mainly because the evidence obtained against them is not permissible in court, like if the authorities got a confession, but they used waterboarding to get it. So that leaves 86 other prisoners cleared for release, yet remain in Gitmo, blocked by Congress. But Congress does allow for an individual to be released if it's in the interest of national security. So right now, the president can order the Pentagon to use this loophole to get those 86 prisoners out of Gitmo. Now, 56 of those 86 prisoners cleared for release or transfer are from Yemen, a country barred by the administration from receiving detainees. So the president would have to lift this ban. Next, the president can let the courts do his work for him. There have been more than 100 habeas corpus cases filed on behalf of Gitmo prisoners by groups like the Center for Constitutional Rights. So he, the president, can instruct his Justice Department to not fight these court cases, essentially giving the Gitmo plaintiffs a win that would lead to either their release or an actual trial. And finally, the president can actually make closing Gitmo a top priority. All of these blocks by Congress expire on September 30th. When the National Defense Authorization Act, which contains these provisions, expires too. Now, Congress will likely try to keep these provisions in place, but the president can tell Congress that he'll veto any bill that prevents him from closing Gitmo. Now, he's threatened a veto before, but never actually went through with it. Of course, this would require the president to use a lot of political capital, but if he really considers Gitmo a moral stain, then it would cost him and the nation a lot more to keep it open. In Washington, Sam Sachs, RT.